fisherman on a boat. The St. John of the Cross, to whom reference is made in the title, was a medieval mystical theologian in the Roman Catholic Church. And people loved this picture. Actually, I remember as a youngster, you know how people use their Bibles as filing cabinets sometimes? Many of my friends, teenagers and in their early 20s, would have this picture inside their Bibles. They almost used it as a kind of devotional help. A few years later, young university student, just in the period when the works of Francis Schaeffer began to be published. And in one of Francis Schaeffer's works, he has a commentary on this famous painting by Salvador Dali, Christ of St. John on the cross. The cross is flying above the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus is nailed to the cross. And Schaeffer makes the very important point that none of us seem to have grasped, which was this, that in this picture, the cross never touches the earth. And so he was really saying, this Christ of Salvador Dali's imagination is not actually the Christ of the Gospels. And Christ of St. John of the Cross is not actually Christ of St. John, the author of the fourth Gospel. Because right from the beginning of the Gospel, John is telling us how the Son of God has come among us and anchored himself to our world. The way he puts it so dramatically in John 1:14 is this: the Word became flesh. Not just that the Word became a man, but the Word entered into the reality and indeed the frailty of our human condition. He became subject to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, to use Shakespearean language, that befalls all of us. And we have a very interesting insight here into the wonder of this in the life of the Lord Jesus. We've seen how Jesus has dramatically displayed the work he will do for our salvation. How Jesus has then taught his disciples to look at what he has done and to see if he is their Lord and Master, then they should also be willing to follow his example in bowing before others, becoming the bond slave indeed of others, in order to serve them for the sake of their salvation. And now it's almost as though John is saying, I just want to pause the action now so that we can look together right into the heart of the Lord Jesus. Jesus has now said that one of them is going to betray him. And you remember how John himself has said to Peter, Peter has spoken with John, and they want to find out who is it that's going to do this. And Jesus says, it's the one that I'm going to give the piece of bread to, once I've dipped it into the marvelous juices that they would use. And he hands it to Judas Iscariot. And Jesus says, I'm telling you this before it takes place, so that when it does take place, you will know I knew that it was going to happen. And then we read these words in John 13, verse 21. After saying these things, Jesus was troubled in spirit. And so John has this sort of amazing section in which he's saying, I'm going to take you inside the mind of the Lord Jesus. And as he does so, several things unfold. The first is this. He tells us, as we've noticed in verses 21 and 22, that Jesus confessed that his spirit was deeply troubled. And the language Jesus uses here is strong language. He is saying, my spirit is agitated. You know how if you're given bad news, that it seems as though your inner framework of emotion seems to be out of sorts. You feel a jangle of your whole person. It's difficult to stay still. And this is what Jesus is experiencing. Actually, the other Gospels will use similar language about this period in Jesus' life, especially when he goes into the Garden of Gethsemane. And as he contemplates the significance of what he's going to experience in the hours that follow, we're told that he has that sense of profound homesickness, of somebody who's far away from home and knows that there is much that needs to be gone through, that is difficult and dark, before they return home again. Actually, the language that's used in Mark's Gospel